Hello and welcome to another Final Fantasy stream and day 3 of our Prog of the New Ultimates. I'm sorry for the little bit longer intro there, but something crazy just happened. Now we had like a very small teaser of that from a clip that Radiance was posting on Twitter, which is TPS's FC obviously, and they teased the transition after phase 3, 4, however you want to define it, the I phase in the new Ultimate, and we just saw on Arthur's stream what happens, and it's absolutely bonkers. The way they did this fight, and the way, or the reason for the checkpoint and everything, hoo boy! Well done, Square Enix, well done. That's really... wow! Let me just adjust my headset a little bit here, but wow, certainly not something that I expected. I mean, again, we speculated about it. We knew that something had to happen with that checkpoint, right? It wasn't just there randomly. It had a reason, and ultimately they did something that I didn't think they were able to pull off, because the checkpoint is set at a... like, it's set after the part where Horshavan dies, right? And that's what tripped me up, because originally that is actually what I thought. I thought that the fight would somehow maybe rewind itself to that moment, but obviously it couldn't, because the checkpoint was behind it, and that's why everybody kept saying, well, they wouldn't want you to essentially enter an instance. So what I was thinking, right, or what I was speculating at first, is that I thought that the checkpoint would be like a branching off point, right? Depending on whether or not you saved Horshavan, the fight would progress differently. And ultimately, that is actually what apparently will happen, even though that particular part we haven't seen yet, at least not on stream. Though it's very clear what will happen ultimately. The thing is, though, they kind of tricked us with the way they implemented it, because it's not just like it's not just that the checkpoint is like a branching off point, because the game or the fight actually rewinds itself to before Harshathon dies. So as soon as you get through the I phase later on in the fight, it actually rewinds to exactly the point where you get tethered, and the arena becomes this very small, very small circle, right? And apparently there seems to be something that teams now have to do in order to save Harshathon. So obviously what a lot of people are speculating now is that you need to hold LB3, which at least currently seems to be a very tight DPS check on phase 3. And not only like the entirety of phase 3, which consists of Nidhogg and the both of the eyes. So that's what people are thinking now, and I think that's probably correct, because so far, if there was like a special LB that you needed somewhere, it's always been LB3, right? So it seems fairly obvious that that's what needs to happen, right? That's what needs to happen, that you hold LB3, you get through all of those phases without losing it or without having to use it to get through, and then once you do, time rewinds itself, you go back to the point where you need to save Horshathon, and then I don't know, we don't know, right? There you need some kind of LB3, probably a DPS LB3 if I were to speculate, so that you can, because here's the interesting part, right? And something that obviously a lot of people were also speculating about, me included, is that it was somewhat strange that the phase transition already happened at like below 30%, right? So you push the knight that is casting Pure of Heart, or whatever it is. If you push him below 30%, then the phase changes, but it just gives you the checkpoint, and the fight more or less progresses normally as you would expect. But well, now I'm thinking that maybe that's the solution, right, instead of a heal LB, which both heal and tank LB technically wouldn't hit Harshathon. That's what people already tried with heal LB1 and tank LB1, right? Though obviously LB3 would be a different thing, technically it shouldn't hit Harshathon. But if you were to LB3 the knight and you can kill him because of that, then potentially what'll happen is that you maybe get released from the chains or something, and so you would be able to save Harshathon that way. But then again, that's pure speculation, right? But it's very, very clear that something LB related needs to happen in that particular phase. But that's really, really crazy to me that like how they did it, how they implemented it, and if you see that transition, I mean, there's a clip obviously on Arthur's channel. If you see the transition of how it happens and how it sort of just rewinds time and puts you back there, and the craziest part is the fight just continues, right? So Arthur's group, obviously they were like they couldn't know that was what was going to happen, and the fight just went back to that particular point, and it just progressed. It progressed as if nothing ever happened, right? They just started. They killed the knight again, and then it transitioned to phase 2 again, and they just went through the same phase that they had already cleared previously. The fight essentially loops infinitely unless you save Harshathon, which is such an insane design that they were able to pull that off in an ultimate fight. I absolutely love it, and I can't wait to get to that point. Obviously, for us, we now know it, right? So it's not going to be a surprise, but still. Wow, what a crazy transition, and what a cool sort of loop. The fact, I can't get over the fact that they actually implemented a fight that can loop infinitely if you don't save Harshathon, and if you manage to theoretically get through it every time. That is so crazy to me, and such a cool and unique design choice as well, right? It's such a much more unique. I mean, I don't even want to call it a gimmick, right? Because it's such a cool idea. Yeah, wow. Seeing that transition just now was absolutely crazy. And yeah. Whew, now we need to calm down again and go into our own prog, right? Which is going to be interesting as well. Now, obviously, we've only done this fight for about 6 hours currently, so we're not that far. But maybe we'll manage to get through the second set of mechanics in Phase 2 today. At least, somewhat mangle our way through. I'm not saying that we'll be able to get it perfectly, because there is a lot of different variations, especially with how the towers are spawning in that particular phase. So once again, I think I went over that yesterday as well, but now that we're, fairly familiar with the first set of mechanics, I would say, we're about 80% on consistently doing that. Or learning that, maybe a bit less, but yeah, we're definitely already there, right? And it's not the most difficult thing in the world, so I'm fairly confident that we'll get that part down today. And then for the second set of mechanics, the first phase where the knights are dashing through the arena, that's not all that complicated, right? You need to learn what to look out for and how far you need to go. But once you have that down, it's not that complicated. But that being said, the second part obviously is a lot harder, and that's the fire-ice stuff, where you need to place the ice puddles, and then people need to run around the arena with the meteors and stuff, and then also take the towers. That's going to be a lot more complicated, because there are a lot of adjustments that people need to be aware of and need to work around in order for that to work. But yeah, hopefully, maybe we'll manage to pull through and see P3 transition once. That would be insane if we could pull that off today. If not, that will be a goal for Sunday, obviously. But yeah, I'm stoked. Seeing that transition now, I absolutely want to continue with this fight. That's so crazy to me. Okay, let me just quickly look at our Discord because people are obviously talking about it. Whew. Yeah. Well, that is certainly something to look forward to. Maybe I should, go through the fight just a little bit. I mean, obviously, we're not even close to that part yet, but Phase 3 looks rather interesting. It's a fairly short phase as well, which I definitely like the design of the Nidhogg phase. I'm talking about the first part of Phase 3 here in particular. So what essentially happens is that people get marked by 1, 2, and 3, and you need to position yourself in a specific way, right? And so people are, according to the numbers, you're being hit by sort of a copy of Estinian. And it looks like you need to look outside when that happens, because the person that's being hit will also spawn a tower that needs to be soaked by somebody else or by the person themselves. I don't really know how that works, if it can be the same person. I think theoretically it will be possible, but you kind of want to position yourself for the other numbers as well, right? Since 3 number 1s are getting hit first, I think what you want is number 2, but that, I'm not really positive on that, but it's number 2 to sort of soak the tower so that they're already pre-positioned for whatever happens next. But not only do you spawn towers beneath you, you also spawn a copy of Estinian doing a line AoE, and that needs to be pointed in the correct direction, right? And that's very, very fast-paced, it looks like. And as I said, right, there's like 3 number 1s, then I think 2 number 2s, and 3 number 3s or something, right? So those need to be placed correctly. Then afterwards, there are like 4 more towers that can change, right? So sometimes it's like a 3 soak, sometimes it's just for 1 person, and sometimes it's for 2 towers. So you need to adjust where people are standing. And like in between those things, the actual boss, the Nidhogg Estinian, does like a frontal cleave that I think can be baited by the main tank, and obviously needs to be away from the party, right? But because you also need to run around, I think this, like the second time when it happened, people are pointing it somewhere else, or maybe it's actually random where it points. I'm not entirely sure on that, but there's definitely a lot going on. It's very fast-paced, but it's also fairly short. It's essentially that, right? It's those numbers that spawn the Estinian copies, spawn the towers, and the line AoEs, essentially, and need to be soaked, right? There's a bunch of towers that need to be soaked, and that's pretty much it. And, well, apparently there is a very tight DPS check that you need to meet in order to progress before before Estinian Nidhogg enrages. If you kill him, then 2 eyes will spawn, and I'm not entirely positive on how that phase works. So there are 2 eyes, and they can sort of heal themselves. There's definitely a mechanic where they can heal themselves. There are also 3 orbs spawning, 2 blue, 1 yellow on each side that need to be soaked, but you kind of need to wait apparently for the yellow orb to grow at least once to soak it. You need 2 people to soak it. The blue orbs need to be soaked by 1 person each, and then there is tethers going on, right? And I'm not entirely familiar with it because I never really did Nidhogg Extreme when it was current, and apparently there was a phase like that already in there. So obviously now it's ramped up, right? And there are like blue tethers and red tethers, and the red tethers are randomly hit by Nidhogg charging down, right? So 2 people are hit at once, and I think you get like a walnut or something probably, so you can't be hit twice by it, essentially, right? And the way to prevent that is you need to look out for which person from your party, like you basically need to split into 2 light parties, and you need to look out for which person that has the red tether gets actually hit by the mechanic. and you then need to take the red tether from them, right? And obviously that can have multiple variations depending on who, like which persons are hit. So you need to really be aware of what's going on. And while that's going on, you also obviously need to deal damage to the eyes themselves. And if you deal enough damage, then the whole time rewind stuff happens. Which also incidentally means that you potentially, again, can't go through that phase with using LB3 because it will mean that you are not able to save Horshavan and the fight will just start over, which is such a crazy design choice. Such a cool thing. Yeah, really, really looking forward to it. As always, stream will be fairly quiet while we're raiding, which is mostly due to the fact that I can't stream the Discord audio, unfortunately, from my PlayStation. So I'm going to join my static here in a minute on Discord, and hopefully you'll enjoy our prog. As I said, day 3, we're at the second set of mechanics in phase 2, and hopefully we'll be able to get through it. So let me join my static here in NPF. Where's the party finder? Dragon Songs Reprise. Oh boy. Alright, gonna join my static and enjoy. See you on the other side. Hello. What's going on? I mean, these are a few of the possible. I don't think they're all of them, right? No, it's still solvable if there are enough towers per quadrant, I think. The pattern that they can't solve is when there's only one tower per quadrant on the inside or something, right? So basically there would be no tower at all on the outside where the person ends up with the meteors.
My brave little spark, how long you've wandered, burned bright as a star. Oh, I have awaited you patiently all this time. Past every fate, now sing with me once more. Share of your life, far greater than memory. It's lost and love words cannot hold. Boundless the tale overflows and carries more. Remember the rain, near and far below.
Arthur's just watched his own clip.
Blessing from heavens above, and how has time flowed on those
I was just saying, Arthur was just watching back his own clip.
streams, rivers, and lakes reaching for the horizon and far beyond. They carry onward, however changed with each brief reflection by setting sun, by storm's waves.
I'll cut you to pieces! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! Filthy rats! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! Filthy rats! Be gone with you! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! Filthy rats! Be gone with you! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! Filthy rats! I'll cut you to pieces! chance! Get on with you! This ends here! And now the final cut!
That was more than enough mitigation on that ancient crawler. Only did 38k. Well, that was 3 DPS or something against you, so. Yeah, every time. Maybe they have to melee LB the knight. Yeah, that's the weird part, right? Technically, you would have to kill the other one as well before you would be able to move out of the circle. So they probably removed the third bar at the beginning so that you can't cheese it somehow. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I meant with the, like, you can do it infinitely, essentially. I mean, the thing at the beginning that's definitely weird is that you don't actually kill the dude, right? You only have to bring him below 30%, so if you actually kill him, that would be a quite significant difference. Well, what I saw someone mentioning in chat that like melee LB goes through damage up, defense up buffs. So technically, the melee LB would ignore the shield that the wings that the other knight is doing. Yeah. So it would probably, more or less instantly kill him, or at least deal like 80%, probably. Which you would need. think, doesn't the boss spawn in facing south? Oh, okay. Hey. But I don't have anything else to do, so might as well. Well, I am working for DHL, so... One. One. Delta. It, yeah. Okay. And also, just to make that clear for me, if like we only do the call out if 1 and 2 are in the same group, obviously, right? Because if only 1 and 2 need to swap, then we already have to swap partners. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Just to. Correct. Yeah, that can't happen. There's only ever a call out if both swords are in the same group, and then only the person that's in the wrong group calls out. Yeah, okay. One. lynched. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit late. Did you get used to that comment? Robin? It's really finicky when the eye is directly behind the knife. Yeah. Yeah. That was a good swap call. True. Give me a couple of OG CDs. I'm bored half to death in my opener. Yeah, well, that.
My brave little spark, how long you've wandered, burned bright as a star. Oh, I have awaited you patiently all this time. Past every fate, now sing with me once more. Share of your life, far greater than memory. Its loss and love words cannot hold. Boundless the tale overflows and carries mortal to see. Remember the rain,
Yeah, it's.
pure and far below, each drop a blessing from heavens above. And how as time flowed on those waters became one, streams, rivers, and lakes reaching for the horizon and far beyond. They carry onward, however changed with each brief reflection, by setting sun, by storms.
Yeah, you need to move into where the night is facing, right?
Sinking deeper and deeper in calm embrace, loving tides sweeping and bear you down. Should you meet a soul rising surface face, with your unbeating heart wish them well. Deep, dark, far away, I have heard your voice. Wait your rejoice. Now our hands join all the meaning you sought. I'll catch your tears, quench your face with joy, till you're near the shore. When time all shall as hope be reborn.
Yeah.
Hush, love, close your eyes. Inside the sunset stands bright.
Can you keep it playing? wouldn't it be, like, looking at those two different clips, wouldn't it be dependent on, yeah, whether or not the knights are facing directly outside, or whether or not they're facing sort of, how do you say that? Like, they're facing each other to the outside. I think that's why they have this weird description, but I can't quite make out what they mean by that, with them, with the left arm facing the outside of the arena or whatever in the guide. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is counterclockwise, right? Yeah. No, I mean, the other teams are doing it consistently, so there has to be something that you can see. No. I mean, the guide says that their left arm is facing the outside of the arena, but isn't it always facing the outside of the arena?
I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! Filthy rats! Be gone with you! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! Filthy rats! I'll cut you to pieces!
And to be honest, it would probably be fairly clear to see it a couple more times as well. It's just a bit unlucky that we always got the clockwise movement.
Down with you!
I had pressed my swift card, I had to use it.
I'll cut you to pieces! Filthy rats! Be done with you! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! Filthy rats! Be done with you!
I think I moved like a second too early with square. Yeah. Must have moved like a meter or something
I'll
like
cut you
that.
to pieces! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you! Filthy rats! Get on with you! I'll cut you to pieces!
I just popped my stuff early when we're behind on damage.
Down with you! Filthy rats! I'll cut you to pieces! Rex! Be done with you! I'll cut you to pieces! Down with you!
Yeah, if you stand further in and your partner's further out, then it will only hit
Cut
you.
you to pieces! Down with you! Filthy Rex! Be done with you! I'll cut you to pieces! threats. Be gone with you! This ends here. And now the final cut.
Problem. Would that have been counterclockwise? Okay. Why do we need an exception anyways? Yeah, but let's say UC needs to switch. She would call out healer, and then so would automatically go to the other group. Yeah. But I mean, the way we had the callout set up, it automatically solves everything. So. Yeah, yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, but that doesn't always work. In the case where nobody needs to call out, so let's say UC gets the 1, but Notha gets the 2. No, you only call out, or what we said was you only call out when 1 and 2 are in the same group. But let's say you get the 1, Notha gets the 2. The way we set it up was you two switch, groups stay the same, but then you and Sil would be in the same group. No, it's only... Yeah, the problem is that it's necessary because otherwise we end up in a situation where one group has two healers. Yeah, it can't happen now, is what I'm saying. It would have happened before. But if two people switch, the double switch, then it can't happen anymore. all the tunnels. Yeah, their left arm basically. Yeah. So But that's what confused me. I wanted to go for the other. There we go. Ranged. Charming. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize you were running back. I should have just not moved at all. And that's the one of the summon. We also need to be full for this stack, apparently. See you. Good night. Well, I mean, overall, it was a pretty good day, I think. I mean, it's going to be a slow prog. Obviously, I think everybody would have been happier if we had gotten the movement for the first set of mechanics down more quickly. It's always a bit of an issue. I mean, I myself, I did it wrong like 3 times back to back, or at least not necessarily wrong, but slower. So it messed some other people up, I think. And yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I sort of tried to adjust to it and like to go more towards the middle. But yeah, that just doesn't work. People just need to move to where there's like to the side that they're standing closer to already, and yeah, otherwise it just doesn't work. But yeah, otherwise I think it's fine. The knight mechanic, that whole weird clockwise, counterclockwise movement, it's just a bit like you need to insert it in your brain what kind of configuration of how the knights look-alike actually facilitates counter or clockwise or counterclockwise. Unfortunately, the guide, instead of, it's not really a guide, obviously, it's just a quickly written document of what people observed, but I didn't really pay close enough attention, I guess, to streams to really figure that out, so I actually I think I'm actually going to go back and look at my own stream for that, because, yeah, unfortunately, no document that I've looked at least, or that we've posted in our Discord, ever really explained how that properly worked, even though it's actually fairly easy. So it's dependent on how the knights are facing, obviously, right? And they can... Like, when you put it in words, and I guess that's why they have trouble putting it into guides, when you see it on a picture, it's really clear. Like, when you see it in the actual raid, it's really, really clear that there is a clear difference of how they're standing. And one is clockwise, and the other is counterclockwise. Now, obviously, the problem is I need to get it into my brain what is what, right? And I think I kind of have it, but that's definitely something that I just need to repeat over and over to myself to get it into my brain. What is clockwise? What is counterclockwise? When you see it, right, and when you associate it with that, right? So you see the configuration of the knights, and you see, oh, hey, that's clockwise, and the other one is counterclockwise. Then it's actually fairly easy to discern. The troubling part is that you also need to switch around with the parties. I know that there's probably, like, technically there should be an easier way of doing that. The problem is that you want to have, or rather you need to have, a healer in both groups, because otherwise nobody's going to be able to heal up the damage that is going on at the same time, because you also need to stack, and the knight's going to charge at you and deal damage to everybody, right? So because of that, unfortunately, you basically want to have a healer in oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Wait a second. I want to open up my stream thing here. That's where I wanted to go. But yeah, that's the issue. So we're doing like 2 swaps at once, and that can be really, really finicky. And I don't know if there's like, I thought the original solution that we had was pretty elegant, right? Where only if both markers are in the same group, one of them moves over to the group they belong to, and they call out which role they are. But unfortunately, that doesn't work. And the reason is, if only the swords are different. So let's say we have group 1 and group 2, right? And the way we set it up originally was that Group 1 would always move to the 1 spot, which is opposite of the Dark Knight, and Group 2 always moves to behind the Dark Knight, essentially. But obviously it can happen that somebody from Group 2 gets the 1 marker, and somebody from Group 1 gets the 2 marker. Now, if both markers are in the same group, technically that's not difficult, because then just the person that is in the wrong group, technically, so the person that's in Group 2 but has the 1 marker, just calls out their role, let's say ranged or tank, and they move over to the other group, and the other person also knows that they have to swap. Now, if both markers are in the wrong group, so let's say one is in Group 2 and the 2 markers in Group 1, technically only the markers need to switch and everything would be fine, right? And we're pre-positioning in our groups, so it's easy to see if the markers are wrong, right? And they just swap over. Now, the problem with that, obviously, or rather, it's not obvious what the problem can be, but that is the problem. Because if that happens, right, the 1 markers in Group 2, the 2 markers in Group 1, if that happens, and the markers just switch, that would be fine, except for when one of the markers is a healer and the other one isn't. In that particular configuration, the healer would swap over and another non-healer would also swap over. And then you would have both healers in the same group. So that's why we then decided to do a double swap, right? Every time a marker is in the wrong group, they call out, right? They call out their role. And then both roles, if both markers are in the wrong group, both roles need to swap. Obviously, it makes it more difficult to adjust, and you don't have that much time. And then while that's going on, you also already need to turn your camera around, or rather your character around. You already need to be facing outside of the arena. You need to be looking at the 2 like paladins and where they're facing to determine whether or not to go clockwise or counterclockwise. And, you know, all of that going on at the same time is kind of finicky. Now, I'm not entirely sure why the 2 marker is always supposed to be behind the Dark Knight. I think it has something to do with how they're charging, right? Oh, right. I didn't connect the dots before. That's because the Dark Knight's going to charge. The Dark Knight is the one that's charging at both groups, right? I didn't actually connect that before. Right, but makes sense. Okay, so the Dark Knight will charge from where he's standing to the opposite group, which is Group 1, and then he will charge back. And I guess if it would be the other way around, right? If one would stand behind the Dark Knight, because of the close distance, he would probably deal more damage, right? Right. Okay, so that's why you need to do that. Well, that makes it quite difficult, actually, because that means that you have to do the double swap that we're doing, unless, I guess an easier way of doing it would be that instead of having predetermined Group 1 and 2, the groups would dynamically adjust based on what markers in the group. And the only case where that's not happening is if both markers are in the same group, then we would default back to Group 1 and 2. Honestly, I don't know if that's easier. It's difficult to say. Unless there is some pattern to who gets 1 and 2. Like if it's always... but then again, would that help to know that it's always 1 tank healer, 1 DPS or something? That wouldn't really do much, would it? I don't know. It's a pretty finicky mechanic, not gonna lie. And then the movement after as well. The weird part about that is that for some reason the arena, like on... What is it? Is it Predation or something in Ultima Weapon? there is also a mechanic that has like a very, very incremental slow movement, and there's like a very tiny safe spot on the edge where you avoid all of the mechanics. But you need to look out for Titans, what's it called, landslide. So you need to like move into the landslide, if I remember correctly. And it's dependent on like the direction you're running, is depending on the setup of everything. It's fairly complicated when you look at it, but easy to solve once you know it. But in that particular case, the arena has sort of markings on the edge, and you can just count the markings and stand at the correct marking. But this arena doesn't really have that. It doesn't really have any sort of marking on the outside. You can obviously take your marker as a specific, spot of where to stand, but the distance you basically have to judge yourself. I mean, it's not the most complicated. You have some wiggle room there. Once you get a feeling for it, you will be fine. It's just still, it's a little bit confusing to me why they didn't really put clearer markers on the edge of the arena. I've noticed that's been a trend, like all throughout the expansion as well, where, that's usually been something where the arena was always the thing that you could orient yourself on the best. Like it was always, there was always something that you could look at and say, all right, that particular thing is always going to be at the exact same spot. I know where to go. I know where to stand, because the arena sort of tells you where you need to go, more or less. But throughout Endwalker, they haven't really done that. Or rather, there have been a few fights where the arena wasn't all that helpful and actually was a bit more confusing rather than helpful as well. I don't know why they've sort of changed their philosophy in arena design a little bit. Obviously here it might also be different because the arena's the same one, I think, where you fought Thorn in the first time, right? So I guess they didn't really want to change it, though they could have put, I mean, they put different markers on the outside of the arena anyways, right? There are these, like, silver arrows where we put the markers. So, yeah, I don't know what's up with that, to be honest. Why they sort of seemingly changed their philosophy on arena design a little bit. I don't know. I mean, again, once you get used to it, you can sort of judge the distances for yourself, right? It's not really complicated. It's just kind of confusing to me why they don't really have markers for that or something like that. Also, I definitely need to rewatch my footage from tonight because there's something weird going on with the second eye as well. There was a poll where I got hit by the second eye. Now I'm not entirely sure. It could have been that I just moved a little bit too slowly, but I'm still not entirely sure where the second eye is even coming from. Like, that's really weird. And then the fact that you can basically stand right in front of Thornton as well, and you sort of need to weirdly position yourself slightly turned so that you don't look at him. It's a very weird thing, to be honest. Like, there's a couple of weird things going on. But yeah, so I need to get it into my head. So if the left arm of the Knights is facing closer to the outside of the arena rather than the inside, or rather, well, not really closer, but yeah, if the left arm of the Knights is facing outside, it's clockwise. And that means if you look in the arena, you need to move to the left. Yeah. Of course. Why wasn't I sure about that? That's weird. Somehow I messed that up, but that might have also been because I was thinking about something else at one point. But yeah, so if the left arm of the Knights is facing the outside of the arena, it's clockwise, and then looking in, you're running left. Or looking out, you're running right, depending, right? That's It's just this, depending on how you turned your camera and where you're looking, it can, you know, you basically want to make sure that you're not thinking about too much stuff. So I guess I should always turn my camera so that I'm like looking into the arena, and then I should, sorry, getting tired. And then I should, so clockwise, adjusting to the left if I see the shield facing outside. And if I see them in a configuration where the shield's more towards the inside of the arena, that's counterclockwise. I really, really need to remember that. I need to insert that into my brain, probably write it down somewhere as well, to really make sure that's a, that I can do that consistently. And yeah, on that first part, it kind of bothers me that I fucked that up like twice or 3 times or something. But that was because I was changing my movement, and I just shouldn't have. There was just one time where one of us just, like, I was already basically almost standing at the edge of the arena, and then somebody else came running and took my spot, and there was nothing I could do. And then, even though it wasn't my fault, I wanted to change my movement to make me able to adjust to something like that, but that doesn't really make sense. It makes a lot more sense to just, because I'm adjusting, like, every time he does his Ascalon's, whatever the fuck it's called, like the baited cone, I always move to the left, and then I basically stand there and look for Thornton. And that's more or less already puts, because I'm not standing in the middle of the arena, obviously, that almost always puts me clearly towards one side of it, right? Obviously I can get, it can be in a configuration where I'm standing either towards Thornton or towards the south, where usually our healers running. So in that case, we do need to adjust it slightly, but in 95% of cases, I'm very clearly towards one side of the arena, and I should keep it that way. No reason to change that, because it's been working. It stopped working when I tried to change something, and I changed it back, and then it worked again. So, yeah. Otherwise, it's just, that's going to be a while, right? Those mechanics are going to take a while, especially with the meteors and their weird tower placement. I'm honestly not entirely sure what they thought about with that mechanic. I mean, obviously it's cool that it's difficult, but it's weird that it's also seemingly very, very random. And it can have a few configurations that are just very, very hard to solve. That's always, right, I don't mind randomness, but every sort of random outcome should be equally difficult. And it looks like there are a couple of configurations that are just clearly harder than other ones. So it's slowing down Prog, is what it's doing, and I'm fine with that, right? Obviously I want this fight to be hard as fuck, and so far it's definitely holding up. I mean, looks really, really cool, especially with the fast-paced mechanics that are happening later on as well. So far it does look pretty awesome. But yeah, we'll just have to see. The more information that is coming in about these mechanics, obviously, the more you might be able to, look at certain things and determine what might work, what might not work, and how you might be able to adjust to certain configurations of how the things are laid out in the arena, right? The only thing that I'm sort of, that's definitely a bit difficult, is that, every time raid is over, we're raiding 3 hours and we're raiding 4 days. That's not nothing, but with an ultimate, you just want to keep going, right? You just want to keep going. You want to keep pulling. You want to do it. You just want to get through and you know, I am realizing that I want a hardcore prog in Ultimate. I mean, as I said, I think I mentioned that previously. T, I actually did. Well, it's always kind of depending on how you define hardcore or semi-hardcore. But we rated between 3 to 4 lockouts a day. So either 8 or 6 hours of pure raid time plus breaks, right? So the 8 hours plus breaks was essentially 10 hours of raiding. If you want to look at it that way, right? So that's fairly hardcore as well. And we were doing it every single day, so yeah. Those were pretty good hours. I would like to do that again, to be honest. Because that's, like, you just want to prog. I could sit here for another 5 hours and try my luck with this ultimate, right? It's very, very fun. It's really, really fun just throwing your head against the wall and trying to get through these mechanics. But because then you also see the progress, right? Right now, it's very, very incremental progress. We're definitely a lot more confident on the first set of mechanics now, even though we're still, you know, there are a couple of situations where people are struggling, but for the most part, it's fine. And then, the second set of mechanics, obviously, we need to figure that out. But I really, really, really would have liked to continue progging now, but oh well. At least I can look, watch the streams and everything that's going on, so that's going to be fun as well. But that being said, it's been a fun evening, and we're going to be back with Prog on Sunday. Now, I'm not going to be able to stream anything else on Sunday. I know I have been saying that I want to get back to Elden Ring, but I've just been doing a lot of stuff in 14, and obviously I also wanted to watch the other streams as well, so it just there was no time essentially to really stream myself. So I don't know if I'm going to be streaming Elden Ring tomorrow. I might, but I also need to do some other stuff as well. Sort of depends. Oh well. The one thing that I can promise is that we're definitely going to continue with the Ultimate Prog on Sunday. That's the one thing that I can promise. But aside from that, I hope you're having a great rest of your evening, morning, day, wherever you are, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. And maybe you want to suffer with us through this fight. That's it. Until next time, bye-bye.